They're calling it the Board of Peace, but the composition tells a different story. 7 figures announced, 60 countries invited, and a phrase from Revelation 17 that describes rulers who receive power without kingdoms. Previous generations couldn't imagine what that meant, but we're watching it happen right now. The names I'm about to reveal will change how you see modern diplomacy forever. On January 16th, the White House made an announcement that stopped diplomatic experts in their tracks, not because of what they called it, but because of who they put on it. This isn't your grandfather's peace negotiation. No dusty conference rooms, no handshake photos. What Trump assembled looks more like a corporate board meeting than a diplomatic mission. But here's what made my hands shake when I saw the list. These aren't traditional diplomats. Half of them don't even represent countries. The World Bank president, a private equity billionaire who controls more wealth than some nations. Former leaders who operate above normal political accountability, all sitting on the same board with actual government officials. And when you see the biblical description of end-times rulers, the match becomes impossible to ignore. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, you need to understand what this board actually is, because the media is calling it a peace plan, but that's not what was announced. What was announced is something far more significant. Let me be crystal clear about what the Board of Peace actually represents. This isn't a peace treaty. It's not a temporary negotiating committee that dissolves when the fighting stops. What Trump announced is a governing oversight structure, an international body designed to manage, coordinate, and enforce peace implementation. That word, enforce, should grab your attention. It implies real authority, the kind of authority that Revelation describes being concentrated in specific hands during the end times. And here's what makes this enforcement different from anything we've seen before. It doesn't require invasion. It requires cooperation, voluntary compliance. Exactly the framework we're watching being built. The board's first mission is Gaza. Phase 2 of Trump's plan involves stabilization, reconstruction, and establishing what they're calling a technocratic Palestinian committee. But here's the part that should make you pause. The board isn't just advising, it's overseeing. It has authority over reconstruction funding, security arrangements, and governance frameworks. Think about what that means. This is an international body with actual oversight power over territory and its future. And many of the people invited don't represent traditional nation-states. They represent institutions, economic power, influence that crosses borders without armies or flags. Remember what Daniel said about the covenant? It would be with many, not bilateral, with many. Invitations went to approximately 60 countries, 60, and that number connects to something Daniel described over 2,500 years ago. But the real shock isn't the scope. It's who's actually running this thing. The founding executive board includes 7 members. 7. While I'm not making direct claims about prophetic numerology, that number appears throughout Scripture for a reason. President Trump serves as chairman, not ceremonial. He's the central figure around whom this entire structure revolves. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. His presence signals this board has the full weight of American foreign policy behind it. Jared Kushner, architect of the Abraham Accords. His involvement connects this board directly to existing peace frameworks. And here's what's crucial about Kushner's presence. The Abraham Accords already exist. The Gaza framework already exists. What we're seeing isn't creation of something new. It's strengthening of something that already exists. Daniel's prophecy uses a specific word. Not create a covenant, but confirm a covenant. Strengthen it. Make it binding. Steve Witkoff, Middle East envoy, declared Phase 2 underway on January 14th. Tony Blair, former UK Prime Minister, Blair's presence signals this goes beyond American initiative. This is multinational. This is coalition. But here's where it gets interesting. A.J. Banga, president of the World Bank. Stop there. Banga doesn't represent a nation. He represents a global financial institution. His authority comes from economic leverage, not territorial sovereignty. No army, no flag, but he controls capital flows affecting billions. That's a different kind of power, and it's exactly what Revelation 17 describes when it talks about kings who receive authority without kingdoms. Mark Rowan, private equity billionaire, CEO of Apollo Global Management. Again, not a government official. His power comes from capital, not citizenship. Do you see what's happening? This isn't traditional diplomacy. This is government officials, former leaders, institution heads, and private billionaires operating as a steering group with oversight authority. These figures operate above normal political accountability. They're not elected by people they'll govern. They're appointed. But what gives this board legal standing in international law? That's what we need to examine next. Here's what most people don't realize about this board. It isn't just a U.S. initiative with international support. It has formal UN Security Council authorization. Resolution 283, passed in November 2025. 13 votes in favor. This resolution authorized establishment of a temporary international stabilization force to operate in Gaza. It gave legal framework to the multinational presence we've been discussing. And this is where it starts sounding like Revelation 17, because that passage describes something very specific about end times authority. Let me walk through this carefully because understanding what Revelation 17 actually says is essential for proper discernment. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Break this down phrase by phrase. 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet. These aren't traditional monarchs ruling established territories. They don't have kingdoms in the usual sense. They're kings without normal trappings of kingship, without borders, without thrones, without hereditary claims. Yet they function as kings. They wield authority. They exercise influence. Think about what we just examined. The World Bank president doesn't have a kingdom. Private equity billionaires don't have kingdoms. International institution heads don't have kingdoms. They have economic leverage, institutional authority, influence that crosses borders without armies or flags. Previous generations couldn't imagine what kings without kingdoms would look like. But we can. We're watching them be appointed right now, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Their authority is temporary, delegated, tied to specific period and specific alignment. The phrase 1 hour emphasizes brevity, not a long-standing empire, a short-lived coalition for specific purpose. Think about the phase-based structure. Phase 1, Phase 2, future phases anticipated. Temporary authority, defined periods, limited mandates that can be extended or terminated. These have one mind. They're unified, common agenda. Despite different backgrounds, different interests, they operate with unified purpose. Their coordination is what makes them powerful. Now, I want to be absolutely clear here. I am not saying the Board of Peace is the fulfillment of Revelation 17. We are not in the tribulation. The Antichrist has not been revealed. The seal judgments, trumpet judgments, and bowl judgments described in Revelation have not occurred. According to biblical timeline, Revelation 17's events take place during the latter part of tribulation after many other prophetic milestones. But here's what I am saying. The structure being assembled right now demonstrates that the kind of arrangement Revelation describes is possible. It shows us what kings without kingdoms could look like in the modern world. It reveals a template, and templates can be expanded. Pilot programs can go global. What works in Gaza can be applied elsewhere. Let me show you specifically why this structure matches the prophetic pattern. When you see the characteristics side by side, the alignment becomes striking. First, it's multinational. This isn't American initiative dressed up with international support. The board genuinely includes figures from multiple nations and institutions. Turkish foreign minister, UAE officials, UN coordinator, World Bank president. Invitations to approximately 60 countries. This connects directly to Daniel's covenant with many. The multinational nature isn't accidental, it's the defining characteristic. Second, it's time-limited and phase-based, explicitly organized around phases. Phase 1 was ceasefire. Phase 2 is stabilization. Future phases anticipated. This isn't permanent governance. Temporary authority for specific purposes with built-in transitions. Exactly like the 1 hour of power described in Revelation 17. And here's what's significant about temporary authority. It can always be extended. What starts as limited mandate can grow into something much larger. Third, it's technocratic. Many key figures don't derive authority from democratic elections or hereditary succession. They derive it from institutional positions, economic power, appointed roles. This is governance by expertise and influence, not traditional political legitimacy. And technocratic authority operates above normal accountability. These figures answer to institutions, not citizens. That concentration of unaccountable power is exactly what end times prophecy describes. There's an even older prophecy we need to examine, a warning from Daniel that describes how the final covenant begins. Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Let me highlight key phrases because they match what we're seeing with striking precision. He shall confirm the covenant. The word confirm is significant. It doesn't say create the covenant. It doesn't say originate the covenant. It says confirm or strengthen. This suggests the covenant already exists in some form and is then formalized by this figure. Think about what we're watching. The Abraham Accords already exist. The Gaza peace framework already exists. International structures for Middle East coordination already exist. What would it take for a powerful figure to confirm these existing frameworks, to strengthen them, to put his authority behind them, and make them binding? That's exactly what's happening. Existing agreements being formalized, existing frameworks being strengthened, existing coordination being institutionalized with many. This isn't bilateral agreement between two nations. It's a covenant with many, multiple parties, multiple nations, multinational framework. The structure includes representatives from multiple nations and international institutions. This is explicitly by design a many nations arrangement. Daniel saw this exact characteristic over 2,500 years ago. For 1 week. In prophetic language, 1 week typically represents 7 years, the duration of tribulation. This covenant has specific time frame, not permanent, temporary authority for defined period. The Board of Peace operates on exactly this principle: phase-based, time-limited, temporary authority with built-in transitions. Now, I want to be careful here. I am not saying the current framework is the covenant Daniel describes. We don't know that. The Antichrist hasn't been revealed. Specific prophetic conditions haven't been met. But what I am saying is this: Gaza appears to be functioning as a pilot theater where multinational coordination is being tested, structures being built, frameworks being established, precedents being set. This is stage setting, template building, machinery being assembled. And Daniel says something else about this covenant that should arrest our attention. He says it has a midpoint. In the midst of the week, that's when betrayal happens, when the agreement is broken, when abomination of desolation occurs. Every covenant that promises peace carries within it the possibility of betrayal. And the betrayal comes precisely when people feel most secure. This leads us to a warning from the Apostle Paul that directly addresses the deceptive nature of end-times peace. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Did you catch the trigger? When they shall say peace and safety. Not when they say war, not when they say danger, not when they say crisis, when they say peace and safety. Think about the language being used right now: ceasefire, stabilization, reconstruction, international cooperation, security frameworks, peace plan, Board of Peace. What is all this language designed to communicate? Peace and safety. And here's what's crucial. Paul says this is precisely when sudden destruction comes. Not during chaos, during calm. Not when everyone's panicking, when everyone's exhaling with relief. The danger isn't in the war. The danger is in the peace that follows. This connects to Jesus' warning in Luke 21 about hearts being overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. The word he uses is snare. Think about what a snare is. A snare isn't loud. A snare isn't obvious. A snare catches you precisely because you weren't expecting it. You stepped into it while your guard was down, while you were focused on something else, while everything seemed calm. And what creates the condition for the snare? Not persecution, not tribulation, surfeiting, overindulgence, drunkenness, numbing distraction, cares of this life, everyday concerns that consume attention. This is why understanding that prophecy can unfold through diplomacy, not just war, is so critical. If you're only watching for invasion, you'll miss the agreement. If you're only watching for conquest, you'll miss the cooperation. If you're only watching for chaos, you'll miss the calm that Scripture warns about. Let me be direct about why I believe this moment is different from previous peace efforts. There have been other peace plans. Camp David, Oslo, the roadmap, Trump's 2020 peace plan, various ceasefires over decades. What makes this different? First, previous approaches were primarily bilateral. They focused on getting two parties to agree: Israel and Egypt, Israel and Palestinians. This approach is fundamentally multinational. It's not about two parties reaching agreement. It's about dozens of nations coordinating under one framework. Second, previous approaches lacked the oversight structure we're seeing now. They were agreements, not governing bodies. The Board of Peace isn't just an agreement. It's an institution with authority, membership, phases, and enforcement mechanisms. Third, previous approaches didn't have the global infrastructure that exists today: real-time communication, instant fund transfers, international legal frameworks, multinational deployment capabilities. The technology and systems that make coordinated global governance possible simply didn't exist during previous peace efforts. Fourth, previous approaches operated largely outside formal international authorization. This one has UN Security Council backing. It's codified. It's legal. It's official. The difference isn't just degree. It's kind. We're not looking at another version of the same peace process. We're looking at a structurally different approach that aligns with prophetic descriptions in ways previous efforts never did. Multinational, authorized, technocratic, enforcement-based, centrally coordinated, time-limited, but expandable. Those aren't just political characteristics. Those are prophetic markers. So what should you be watching for in the coming months? First, watch for economic power being coordinated under political authority, the marriage of private wealth and government oversight. Second, watch scope. Right now, the focus is Gaza, but Trump has explicitly said this model could be expanded to resolve conflicts worldwide. Third, watch authority. The International Stabilization Force is currently planned for Gaza, but watch for any expansion of that authority. Watch for any presence that moves closer to Jerusalem. Watch for any framework that begins to address the Temple Mount or holy places. Fourth, watch the language. When you hear peace and safety, when you hear stabilization and cooperation and international framework, remember what Paul warned. These aren't neutral terms. These are the exact conditions that precede sudden destruction. The language of peace is the language of the snare, but there's something else coming that will make the Board of Peace look like a small-scale test run. Something that involves a technology most people don't even know exists yet. Something that could make global coordination instantaneous and absolute. And when you understand what that technology is, you'll realize why the infrastructure being built right now isn't just about Gaza. It's about something much bigger. Something that makes the phrase "kings without kingdoms" look like prophecy written for our exact moment in history. The question isn't whether this is the fulfillment. The question is whether you'll recognize the pattern when the real thing arrives.